All right, let's bring our first guest in here. This is Dewey Steffen. Dewey, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Charlie. I'm doing great. Yourself?
Doing all right. I like this. Listen, the Feds were had a big meeting today, and the discussion was whether to up the interest rates, lower the interest rates, keep them the same. And just a couple of hours ago, they made a decision. A lot of people wanted to see the rates drop. They've been dropping in the past. This is big interest rates where a lot of people can get loans, that type of thing. All right, Dewey, what'd they do?
They kept rates unchanged at the 3.5 range, give or take, and the biggest dissension in that room since 1992. So there's a lot going on, my friend.
All right, let's try to see if we can figure this thing out. Let's go do some basics, okay? We got some time here, all right? Why is the Feds, when they talk about interest rates, how does that affect me or him or anybody around here? How does that affect it?
Well, interest rates are kind of at the core of borrowing money and or receiving money if you're a lender. So people who have money in the bank, that kind of dictates what kind of interest you'll get on your money is benchmarked off of the Fed funds rate.
But
and then the other side.
I'm not borrowing any money, though.
Well, again, lending.
Actually, I think I am, but I'm not really borrowing any money unless I'm buying buildings or buying like maybe property. That would be an effect, right? The mortgage rates, is there?
Sure. So again, the one side is if you have money somewhere and you need to live off of it. So for the retirees out there, the interest rate number is what you earn on your money. But then the other side, as you mentioned, is on the borrowing. And those are your key interest rate for lending would be mortgages, would be certainly credit cards, would be certainly auto loans. So those are the big three on the debt side. So there's borrowing and then receiving, and that's where it comes from.
Well, last time, what's the typical mortgage rate on a home? Let's just do that. What's it right now? About
well, you can say give or take 6%, but you know if it's a 30-year fixed or 15-year fixed. But we can use that magic number right now of
30-year
6%.
fixed. Let's make it easy right now, 6. But you just told me the Fed's kept the rate at 3.5.
Sure.
Where's that extra 3% or so? Who gets that money?
Well, that's a bigger question. So again, that's the benchmark Fed funds rate because there's an overnight lending rate. There's all kinds of different rates. And so who gets what depends. Again, a credit card rate, guess what, Charlie, is usually 25 to 29%. So again, it's just the benchmark. So we have to start somewhere.
I never understood why the credit card rates, because that's a usurious, as they say in the financial world. How come they get charged so much? And the risk isn't that much. It's not that much.
Again, talk to your congressman or to the bank CEOs themselves.
All right, so it's a matter of security, I guess. It's an unsecured loan, I guess. But 25%, whoa, that's something. If the rates go down, does that mean mortgage rates go down and auto loans go down, credit cards go down? Is that kind of what that means?
So certainly. So we had interest rates as low as 0 during COVID, okay? And they were at 0 for a very long time. And that's where we had mortgage rates that were in the 2s and the low 3s, right? And you remember that, Charlie, we all would have said, hey, I don't even need to buy a new home, but I want to if I can get a loan at 3%. The other end is back to the 1980s that, you know, mortgage rates were as high as 20%, 15 to 20. So we were up over 7% a while ago. They were down to the 5s. They're back to about 6. And now that's where the dissension comes in because we were all expecting them to cut rates this year, get us back to the promised land. And because of the conflict in Iran and other issues, the Fed has said we can't lower them anytime soon. In fact, we may have to raise them later in the year. And that is what has us all paying very close attention.
So you got to explain it to me. I got to go back to Economics 101. That's a hard thing. Why would the interest rates go up? And what benefit does that have for the average consumer who has a credit card, auto loan, or mortgage?
Well, the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate, and this is all talking the Federal Reserve. Today was the Fed funds rate and the meeting we discussed. So with that, the Fed has a full employment and low or no inflation mandate. You know, low inflation and full employment. And so with inflation, our overall inflation, I think we as consumers can say things are costing more, and that means inflation is up. So whether it's the fast food or, you know, the car that you buy, but in this case, guess what? Oil, Charlie. Oil has gone from $60 a barrel to $120 a barrel. So at the pump, that's from $2.50 at the pump to about $5 at the pump. That is 100% inflation year over year. And so the Fed has to fight inflation. And one of the primary ways you can do that, going back to your economics, is by raising interest rates.
I don't understand that, though. I mean, think about this. You were paying $5 a gallon probably next week or so, or whatever. And you're telling me now I've got to pay more for my mortgage and my credit card and my auto loan? I don't understand why we're paying more. And that's somehow the feds think that's a good idea. Explain that, Dewey.
Again, we don't have enough time in this segment to really get into it. Take a class on economics because, again, you're correct. There's two sides to every story. And actually, there's probably a third or a fourth side as well. But in the general sense is if you have adding fuel to the fire and people spend more by having lower interest rates, that makes us excited. We go out and spend more. Well, if we're spending more on things that cost higher, that would be super inflation. That would be hyperinflation. So by raising the prices all the way around, you're going to do less. So we're all going to do less, which means those prices then artificially come back down because if no one's doing anything, supply and demand, back to economics, says if you don't have enough demand, you're going to reduce your supply to meet it.
See, that's an artificial. Why didn't you let the is the senators in this Fed? What is it actually? The Federal Open Market Committee, I think it's called. The Feds, just say the Feds for the. Is the idea there that people say that let the market decide and not the Fed? Is that kind of where the dissenters?
No. The dissension today was very much like, listen. Textbook economics says we need to raise rates now. Are you crazy? And again, this goes back to Chairman Powell and what he said last fall as things were starting. And then Donald Trump said, you're actually going to get out because we want to lower these because we know it spurs growth. But again, the other side of the table. So in that committee room, apparently I certainly wasn't in there, but the dissension was, we're not lowering rates. We need to raise rates. And the dissension is no, leave them where they're at. So lower them, raise them, leave them where we're at. Wall Street hates uncertainty. We all hate uncertainty. If we all know they're going to lower, we can plan accordingly. If we all know they're going to raise, we can plan accordingly. But if a third of the room wants to lower, a third wants to keep the same, and a third wants to raise, we can't plan in any way, shape, or form.
Like you ask, 9 lawyers and you get 10 different answers. I mean, it's incredible. So I did take an economics course, and I'll tell you, I didn't really understand this. So what you're saying is when the interest rates go up, people will not buy as much, and therefore prices will go down.
You got it.
I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense. You understand it?
No. Because what happens also, again, you got to remember those wages.
I explained it to him. I explained it to me, too, because I don't get the concept, though. Because I'm paying more, so I'm going to buy less. I understand that part, but then prices eventually are going to have to come down because nobody's buying anything. So who wins in this? I mean,
well, it all gets back to a neutral equilibrium. And then on top of that, again, you have wages. So there's wage pressure where, again, if wages need to go up. So then again, if things cost more, then we as employees go to our boss and say, listen, you need to pay me more or I can't pay for all those things that cost more. And so then the company says, okay, I'll do that. So then they're going to raise their prices till then your prices go higher. So it's this snowball. And you can have a situation where, it spirals out of control. It's great when there's, low interest rates and we're all having a party, and it's really difficult if everything's very expensive because rates and things cost high. So again, the Fed gets back to the basics of figure out full employment and figure out low inflation.
Tell me, go back to Iran. Why is the war in Iran is such a big deal?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. You're talking, the religious reasons, the loss of life reasons. The loss of life reasons is the big one.
Let's talk about the economics. The oil, the price of the oil. You said it's way out of control. If the war ended today, what do you think? Do you think the Feds would be more likely to lower interest rates?
Yes, certainly yes. Short answer, yes.
And why?
Well, because again, the Straits of Hormuz is where the majority of this conflict is centered around. And that's because that's where something like 80% of the worldwide oil is transported through and goes around.
Under your theory, though, if the oil went down in price, more people would be buying, and then gas stations could charge more. It seems like it's the opposite theory from what you said about the reason to increase interest rates because people would buy less. Well, I don't get it.
Well, again, you got to go back to maybe even go reverse engineer supply and demand. Okay, so right now there's no supply. It's all locked in this strait. So if there's no supply and you need to get gas in your car, Charlie, and I'm also need gas in my car, but only one of us can get the gas we need, it comes down to who's going to outbid whom for that gas. And so it also comes down to supply and demand.
And when you financial planners get together and, you have a glass of wine or whatever you guys do in your spare time. What is it that you guys talk about? Are you guys talking about inflation? Are you guys talking about these interest rates? Are you guys talking about home mortgages? Because I would bet that not many people are going to be investing a whole lot, or if they are, they're going to be pretty conservative stocks, I would think.
Well, again, I don't want to get into that because you may be wrong, and I don't want to say that you're thinking wrong. But again, think about it.
I can be wrong.
As anyone in the investment community and all your listeners and viewers and those that are investors, it's the economy stupid. Have you heard this in the past? Everything long-term is based upon the health of the economy. We have a cycle. There is a recessionary period. There's again a robust expansion period, and then there's a contraction. And so there's all these different cycles. There's actually 4. However, so we look at the economy, the stock market, and things are headlines for today. But long term, we're looking at the economy. And guess what? The economy, through all of this, is actually doing quite well at that national level.
So where do you see these? Let's just go quick with a summary. Summarize a little bit. Where do we see oil prices the next 6 months or so? Up or down, do you think?
Well, there's a lot going on because we can't really determine that. But I'm going to say they're going to stay right around here. Again, the difference between the price of a barrel of oil and what you pay at the pump, it doesn't just flip a switch that next day.
How often do the Feds meet? Every quarter?
It's usually every month, but I think there's 10 per 12 months. So it's just about once a month, but not quite.
Can they lower the interest rates anytime they meet?
Sure. They actually had an emergency meeting a week or 2 ago that maybe had something to do with this. It turned out to be something else unrelated. But if you remember, we had the Silicon Valley Bank. They met on a Sunday to make sure that the bank would be okay on a Monday morning. So, yeah, they can meet anytime they need if there's an emergency situation.
Think 6 months from now, where will those interest rates be?
Oh, wow. Another good question. I'm going to say that they're going to be right around here.
Powell is out as of May 15th,
That's
right?
correct.
He's the chairman of the Feds, the interest people that make the interest rates. He's gone. And the president really did the president pick someone yet? I think he did.
Yes.
And that woman
starts May 5th. It's a gentleman. Starts May 15th. If he gets what it's called through the Senate,
it's not confirmed.
Confirmed.
So, but if he's thinking about lowering the interest rates, I would think.
Well, he's known as what's accommodative or a dovish, meaning he is. That's his traditional stance, and so it doesn't mean there's nothing that's concluded now. But in a basic sense, to start the year, Charlie, Wall Street had assigned high probabilities of 2 to 3 cuts this year because of the war, because of the situation at hand. We're now down to an estimate of 1 cut per year, but that is now changing instantly or real time to no cuts per year and maybe an increase per year. So at a normal cut would be 25 basis points or 0.25%. 3 of those would be a 0.75 lower, so you would get a 6% mortgage down to 5.25 per se. But if they go up, that changes how much you borrow by a lot, I would imagine.
I would think so. All right, Dewey Steffen, CEO, Great Lakes Wealth. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Good, my man.
We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, big announcement in Detroit today, a brand new hotel, 600 rooms. What would that do for the city? We'll talk about that coming up next.